Story 1. The Neighbor That Wasn't There. I've always been a rational guy. My name's Steve, and up until a few months ago, I was just another 28-year-old living a quiet life in my new apartment. I'd moved into a small, 6-unit building on the edge of the city. It was nothing fancy, but it was mine, and I loved the freedom of living alone. The building was old but charming. It had that classic 1940s architecture, thick walls, hardwood floors, the kind of place that creaked under your feet no matter how softly you walked. There were 5 other tenants, but I hardly ever saw them. Everyone kept to themselves, which suited me just fine. When I first moved in, everything seemed perfectly normal. Days were peaceful, nights were quiet. I'd come home from work, grab a beer, maybe play some video games or watch Netflix. Simple, uneventful. Then, a few weeks after I'd settled in, something changed. It started with little things. Odd noises that I couldn't explain. At first, I assumed it was the quirks of an old building, pipes creaking or someone upstairs walking a bit too heavily. But then, the noises became more distinct. It wasn't just random bangs or groans. It sounded like furniture being dragged, chairs scraping across the floor, or doors slamming shut with force. And the weirdest part? It always came from the apartment next door. That apartment 3B had always seemed empty to me. I'd never seen anyone coming or going, never heard footsteps or voices from inside. When I asked my neighbor Lucy, a friendly older woman who lived downstairs, she told me the previous tenant had moved out 6 months ago. "Place has been empty ever since," she said casually, shrugging it off. But if it was empty, then who or what was making all that noise? One night, the noises got louder than usual. It was 2 a.m. and I was dead tired from a long day at work. The banging from 3B woke me up, and I could swear it sounded like someone throwing furniture against the walls. After a few minutes, I couldn't take it anymore. I marched over to the door of 3B and knocked, more out of frustration than expecting an answer. To my surprise, the door creaked open on its own. Just a crack, but enough to make my heart skip a beat. I pushed it open slowly, calling out, "Hello? Anyone there?" The apartment was pitch dark. I reached inside to flip the light switch, but nothing happened. Dead bulbs. The smell hit me next. Stale, musty, like the place hadn't been aired out in months. I couldn't see much, but the layout was the same as mine. A living room straight ahead, a small kitchen to the side, and a hallway leading to the bedroom. I didn't stay long. Something about the place made me uneasy, like I was trespassing. I backed out and closed the door behind me. But the weird part? As I stood in the hallway, I swore I heard footsteps coming from inside. Soft, slow footsteps, like someone was walking barefoot across the floor. I rushed back to my apartment, heart pounding. I told myself it was just my imagination. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The next day, I ran into another neighbor, Tom, in the lobby. He was around my age, a quiet guy who lived in 2A with his girlfriend, Amanda. "You hear anything strange last night?" I asked him, trying to sound casual. He looked at me, his face pale. "You too, huh?" he said. "We've been hearing things from 3B for weeks, thought we were going crazy." We both decided to ask the landlord about it. Mr. Garcia, a gruff older man who owned the building, didn't seem fazed by our complaints. "3B's been vacant for months," he said. "Ain't nobody living there. Maybe you're just hearing the old pipes or something." Tom and I exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't just pipes. Something strange was going on, and we weren't the only ones noticing it. Over the next few nights, the noises continued. Sometimes it was faint, like someone shuffling around quietly. Other times it was loud, violent, like someone was throwing things across the room. I even heard a low, muffled sobbing once, though I couldn't tell if it was real or my mind playing tricks on me. Tom and Amanda heard it too, and it was starting to freak them out. One night, Amanda woke up screaming, saying she saw someone standing in their bedroom doorway. Only, when Tom turned on the light, no one was there. Things came to a head about a month after the noises started. I was sitting in my living room, trying to ignore the usual late-night sounds from next door, when I heard something new. It wasn't just banging or dragging. It was a voice, faint, almost a whisper, but I could make out the words. "Help me. Please." Chills ran down my spine. I grabbed my phone and texted Tom. "You hear that? From 3B?" His reply came almost immediately. "Yeah, we're freaked out, man. It's getting worse. That night, I barely slept. The voice haunted me, echoing in my head. Who was it? Was someone trapped in 3B? Was it a prank or something darker? The next morning, I decided to call the police. I couldn't take it anymore. When the officers arrived, I told them everything about the noises, the voice, the weird feeling that something was seriously wrong in that apartment. They knocked on the door of 3B just like I had weeks before. When no one answered, they unlocked it with the building's master key and stepped inside. I watched from the hallway, holding my breath. When they came out a few minutes later, their faces were grim. "No sign of anyone inside," one of them said. "Looks like it's been empty for a while. Just some old furniture covered in dust. No evidence of anyone living there recently." I couldn't believe it. I had heard the voice. I knew something was in there. After the police left, I felt more unsettled than ever. That night, the noises stopped. Silence. No banging, no dragging, no whispers. It was almost worse than the noise. It was like the quiet was waiting for something. A week later, I was packing up to move out. I couldn't stay in that building any longer. As I taped up the last box, I heard it again. A soft, whispering voice. But this time it wasn't coming from 3B. It was coming from the wall behind my bed. "Steve," it whispered, so faint I almost didn't hear it. "I'm still here." I froze, staring at the wall in disbelief. I grabbed my keys, left the apartment without looking back, and never returned. Whatever was in that building, whatever had haunted 3B, wasn't finished. It's been months since I left, and I've tried to put the whole thing behind me. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about that voice, the sounds, and that last whisper. I've moved across the city to a new place, but every now and then, in the quiet of my new apartment, I could swear I hear it again. A faint, distant whisper. I'm still here.
Story 2, The Final Goodbye. It's strange how life can change in a moment. How something as ordinary as a dream can haunt you forever. My name is Jack, and this is a story I've never been able to shake off. I wasn't always the type to believe in the paranormal or anything like that, but what happened to me a few months ago, well, it made me question everything. I grew up close to my cousin Sylvia. We were practically siblings, even though we lived in different cities. Me in Cleveland and her in a small town just a few hours away. Sylvia was more than just family, she was one of my best friends. Whenever we visited each other during holidays, we'd stay up late talking about everything, from school drama to our dreams for the future. Sylvia had this contagious energy that just made you feel good to be around her. We'd talk almost every day, texting back and forth, sharing memes and venting about life. Nothing felt off with her. She was 24, healthy, and always full of life. There was no reason to worry about anything. Until that night. It was a Tuesday, one of those regular, boring days. I remember getting home from school, eating dinner, and doing some homework before heading to bed. My phone buzzed once, and I saw it was a message from Sylvia. Just a random meme, nothing special. We chatted for a bit, and then I went to sleep. But that night I had a dream, a vivid one, the kind that sticks with you even after you wake up. In the dream, I was sitting on the couch in my living room, just like I would on any other lazy weekend. Then Sylvia walked through the door, smiling like she always did. It wasn't strange to see her. It felt natural, like she'd just dropped by for a visit. But there was something different about her. She looked peaceful, not her usual bubbly self, but calm, almost serene. She sat down next to me and gave me the tightest hug. It wasn't the kind of hug you give someone when you're just saying hello. It felt like a goodbye. Like she was holding on a little longer than usual, like she didn't want to let go. "I love you, Jack," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I love you too, Sylvia," I replied, confused. "Is everything okay?" She just smiled and shook her head. "I came to say goodbye." I frowned. "Goodbye? Where are you going?" She didn't answer me. She just stood up, smiled again, and walked towards the door. I tried to call after her, but my voice didn't work. I just sat there, frozen, watching her walk away. Then, just as she reached the door, she turned around one last time, her eyes full of emotion. "Take care of yourself," she said. And then I woke up. I remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to shake the eerie feeling that clung to me. It was just a dream, I told myself. But it felt so real. I could still feel her arms around me, the warmth of her hug, the finality in her words. It was 7 a.m., and I was getting ready for school when my mom came into my room. I'll never forget the look on her face, pale, shaken, like she had just heard the worst news in the world. My heart sank before she even said a word. "Jack," she said softly, "I need you to sit down." I sat down on the edge of my bed, my stomach twisting in knots. "There was an accident," she said, her voice breaking. "Sylvia passed away last night." I didn't believe her at first. It couldn't be true. We had just been texting the night before. She was fine. There was no way. "How?" I managed to ask, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. "She had a heart attack," my mom said, her eyes filling with tears. "It happened sometime around 3 a.m. I felt the ground drop out from under me. 3 a.m. That was the exact time I had that dream, the exact time she had come to say goodbye. The next few days were a blur. The family gathered for her funeral, and everyone was in shock. Sylvia had been perfectly healthy. There were no signs, no warnings. It just didn't make sense. But while everyone else mourned in confusion, I couldn't shake the feeling that I knew something they didn't, that somehow, in that dream, Sylvia had come to me, as if she knew what was going to happen. I didn't tell anyone about the dream at first. It seemed too strange, too unbelievable. But it haunted me. Every night, I would lie awake, replaying the moment she hugged me, the look on her face as she said goodbye. I wondered if it was just a coincidence or something more. A week after the funeral, I couldn't take it anymore. I told my mom about the dream. I expected her to brush it off, to say it was just my subconscious processing the grief. But instead she looked at me with wide eyes. "Jack," she said slowly, "the night Sylvia passed, I had a dream too." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "In my dream, I was standing in the kitchen and Sylvia was there," she explained. "She hugged me just like you described. And she said goodbye. I didn't think much of it until now, but..." We both sat there staring at each other, the weight of the coincidence sinking in. 2 dreams, 2 goodbyes, same night. The more I thought about it, the more unsettling it became. I started to wonder if there was something Sylvia had been trying to tell us. Maybe her death wasn't just an accident. Maybe she knew it was coming, and she came to us in her final moments. But that's where things got weirder. A few nights later, I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of my phone buzzing. Half asleep, I grabbed it from my nightstand and saw a new message notification. My heart stopped when I saw the name on the screen. It was from Sylvia. For a second, I thought I was dreaming again, but the message was real. It was a single text, just 4 words. "I'm always with you." My hands shook as I stared at the screen. It didn't make sense. Her phone had been disconnected. How could I be getting a message from her? I wanted to delete it, to ignore it, but something in me couldn't let go. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning, the message was gone, completely vanished from my phone as if it had never been there. To this day, I still don't know what really happened. Was it just grief playing tricks on my mind? Or did Sylvia somehow find a way to reach out to us one last time, to say goodbye, and to let us know that she wasn't really gone? I'll never have the answers. But every so often, in the quiet of the night, I'll feel a warmth in the air, like a presence I can't explain. And I'll remember her words from that text, "I'm always with you." Maybe she still is.
Story 3. The Mirror Double. I've always found mirrors fascinating. They're part of our everyday lives, but if you think about it, there's something deeply unsettling about seeing your reflection stare back at you. My name's Anne, and what happened to me a few months ago made me question everything I thought I knew about mirrors and about myself. It all started on an ordinary Saturday afternoon. I had just moved into a new apartment in the heart of the city, a small but cozy 1-bedroom place that was perfect for me. After weeks of settling in, that day, I decided to visit a nearby antique shop. I've always loved old vintage things, and the shop was filled with quirky furniture, trinkets, and of course mirrors. There was one that caught my eye right away. It was tall, about 6 feet, with a beautifully ornate gold frame. The glass had a slight tarnish to it, like it had been around for years. Something about it felt different. It wasn't just another antique. It felt like it had a history. The owner of the shop, a frail old man named Mr. Miller, noticed my interest. "That mirror's got character, doesn't it?" he said with a chuckle. "Been here for as long as I can remember." I wasn't sure why, but I felt drawn to it. "How much?" I asked. "Tell you what," he said. "I'll give you a discount. Just make sure it's going to a good home." I smiled, not thinking much of it. A mirror was just a mirror, right? Or so I thought. When I brought it home and placed it in my bedroom, it fit perfectly. My apartment wasn't big, but the mirror made the room feel larger, and there was something about it that added character. For the first few days, everything seemed normal. I'd glance at myself before heading to work, fix my hair, check my outfit. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then, strange things started happening. The first time I noticed, it was subtle. I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom one morning when I glanced toward my bedroom where the mirror was positioned. From the corner of my eye, I saw myself standing there, just staring. I quickly looked back into the bathroom mirror, confused, but nothing seemed off. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just a trick of the light or my tired mind playing games. But it happened again and again. Sometimes I'd be walking past the mirror and catch my reflection looking at me a fraction of a second too late, as if it wasn't quite synchronized. Other times I'd see movements out of the corner of my eye when I wasn't even near the mirror. But the worst part was when I started feeling like I wasn't alone in the room, even though I was. I told my best friend Sarah about it one evening over coffee. She laughed it off, saying I was probably just stressed from work. "It's just an old mirror, Anne," she said. "You're overthinking it." Maybe she was right. I tried to shake it off, but things only got stranger. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I glanced into the mirror while changing. My reflection stared back, as usual, but this time, something was off. It was subtle at first. My reflection was smiling. The problem was, I wasn't. I froze, staring into the glass, my heart pounding in my chest. My reflection stood perfectly still, but that eerie smile remained plastered on its face. I blinked hard, trying to reset whatever illusion I was seeing. When I opened my eyes, my reflection looked normal again. No smile, no strange expression, just me. I didn't sleep well that night. Every creak in the apartment, every shadow outside the window felt amplified. And then, just as I was about to drift off, I heard it. A soft, faint whisper, coming from the direction of the mirror. I couldn't make out what it said, but I knew it wasn't my imagination. The next day, I covered the mirror with a sheet, hoping that would somehow stop the strange occurrences. But the feeling of being watched didn't go away. In fact, it got worse. A few days later, Sarah came over to hang out. I hadn't told her the full extent of what had been happening because, honestly, I wasn't sure how to explain it. We were sitting in the living room, chatting and laughing, when she got up to use the bathroom. A minute later, I heard her voice from my bedroom. "Anne?" she called, her voice sounding unsure. "Are you in here?" I got up and walked towards the bedroom door. "What are you talking about? I'm right here." When I entered the room, Sarah was standing in front of the mirror, staring at it with wide eyes. I thought I saw you in the reflection, but you weren't smiling. You looked different." My stomach dropped. "Sarah, I think we need to get rid of this mirror." That night, after Sarah left, I decided to finally move the mirror out of my bedroom. I didn't care how much I had paid for it. I just wanted it gone. I grabbed the edge of the frame and started to drag it towards the door, but as I did, the lights in my apartment flickered. I stopped, my hands trembling, as I heard a low, soft voice behind me. It wasn't coming from anywhere in the room. It was coming from the mirror. "Don't leave me," it whispered. I turned around slowly, staring at the reflection. My double was there, standing still in the mirror. But something was wrong. It wasn't just me anymore. It looked like me, but the expression on its face was dark, twisted, almost malicious. I backed away, my heart racing. My reflection didn't move. It just stood there, grinning at me. That night, I decided to stay at Sarah's place. I couldn't bear to be in the apartment alone anymore. I left the mirror behind, covered in that sheet, and locked the door behind me. But even at Sarah's, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I kept checking the corners of the room, half expecting to see that eerie reflection standing there, grinning. The next morning, I went back to my apartment with Sarah. We agreed that I should get rid of the mirror for good. I couldn't risk it staying there, not after everything that had happened. But when we opened the door, the mirror was gone. The room was exactly as I had left it, except for one thing: a note, scrawled in what looked like my handwriting, lying on the floor in front of where the mirror had been. It said simply, "I'll be back." I moved out of that apartment a week later. To this day, I don't know where the mirror went or how it disappeared. Sometimes, late at night, I catch glimpses of my reflection in a window or a glass. And for a split second, I see that smile again. I don't know if it's all in my head or if something is still out there, waiting to come back. But one thing's for sure: I'm never bringing another mirror into my home again.